We've now come to the sponsor perspective portion of our program. Please welcome to the stage John Clark, VP and General Manager of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, in conversation with Joe Ruffalo, General Manager of The Hill.
Well, good morning, John. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah.
Just to jump right in, could you tell us more about Skunk Works in general, just so people know all the background of what you do, and then how your team is accelerating innovation in support of the future of defense and 21st century security?
Yeah, absolutely. So Skunk Works, hallmark organization of the Department of Defense that when you go back and look at those aircraft that help facilitate navigating through the Cold War, most of the aircraft that get highlighted are aircraft that came from the Skunk Works. The old adage, Skunk Works was born in 1943, driven by activities in World War II, with the Germans tearing up a lot of our Allied bombers with the Me-262 Messerschmitt. And the Kelly Johnson, who is ultimately the founder of Skunk Works, went to the Army Air Corps and said, I think I can get you a jet fighter in 180 days. And 143 days later, that aircraft took first flight, and that began the Skunk Works. And from that point forward, we've pioneered, innovated with new technology, driving new capabilities into aircraft with a myriad of things. You can see that from what began with the first jet fighter, you had the U-2 taking on high altitude missions and collecting information that was very vital in the 60s and 70s to drive the National Command Authority and the decisions there. That then also beget the SR-71. With the SR-71, an airplane that was shot at a lot but never hit, and it provided a lot of great information. And then transitioning from altitude, then speed, then stealth, and we innovated around stealth. And with that stealth capability, that began the F-117. And that played a very prominent role in the Gulf War, where a very small fleet of aircraft were part of getting the majority of the priority targets. And then you move forward. We're doing the same thing today, just not a lot I get to talk about. And as it relates to the innovations that we have now, we've navigated through, you had the first jet fighter, then getting high altitude flight, then navigating through speed and flying at Mach 3 plus, and then all the stealth. Where things are happening today, we're pushing on several of those boundaries. We have been the front end of our Lockheed Martin team in the 21st century security construct with hypersonic related technologies, looking at where we can go Mach 5 with weapons or greater, and understanding how to do that, and then learning from those technologies and how they could apply to different systems over the long haul. In addition, we're continuing to push as each of these different domains. There was a common thread through the U-2 and the SR-71 of gathering information. Well, we're in the information age now, where we're looking at how we can integrate all of that information together, fuse that information truly in that 21st century security construct of being able to have as close to omniscient knowledge as you can with a very, very complex adversary, the fog and friction of war, and bring all those things together so that our decision makers have the best possible information that's coming from our aircraft, and then partnering with other domains in a multi-domain fight with space, as well as with the surface domain and subsurface domain, undersea domain, to be able to get all of that information together to make the best possible decisions.
And building on that, and we heard some of this earlier, how do you envision the role of advanced technologies like AI and machine learning to kind of lead us into the next few decades for the defense ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's going to play a very prominent role in everything we do. Just harkening back to the previous speakers, it will be everywhere. Today, we're using and applying artificial intelligence in a myriad of ways. Part of our design life cycle and understanding how we can, through generative design, design an aircraft much faster, as well as in operations, where you're looking at using information and allowing the artificial intelligence to sift through terabytes of information and help make the job of the warfighter easier based on what's presented to them. I think that's one of the things that we've done. Candidly, the first artificial intelligence project that I was involved with and doing things with was in 2007. and things that we were doing in the Skunk Works, where we were exploring different deeply layered neural networks to go look at how enemy behaviors were changing based on the actions that we were putting upon them and using that to drive our decision making. We continue to advance thoughts like that and ideas like that. With one nuance that we've learned as we applied some of those technologies to some of the systems that are in operation today is that you really have to focus on adapting around the human, because some of these technologies, if the human, ultimately it's one of the great things with the way in which our nation approaches the application of AI is that it's done in an ethical manner. And by doing that, that's allowing, you have to work around the human that is responsible for ultimately making the decision. AI can't sit in front of a judge and why did you make that decision? But a human does. And so really working that software and that artificial intelligence capability to work around the human, to help feed the human, to make sure that that decision maker, our men and women of the armed services, have the best information to make the decision and then employ the warfighting assets that we provide them.
As Lockheed Martin continues to push the boundaries of innovation, what are some of your challenges you think you're facing in maintaining technical integrity and rapid deployment as you go forward?
Yeah, I think the number one item that I would highlight is our penchant for risk aversion. What is naturally manifested over time is that we've got decades of lessons learned where something didn't go exactly right. Well, it didn't go exactly right based on the technology of the time. And then you fast forward and you try to apply a new technology with a new construct, and a lesson learned from 2 decades ago now comes forward, and it's like, well, we can't do that anymore, or we can't do that. And it's like, well, why not? And you start to navigate through that risk aversion process, and that risk aversion manifests in every facet of the acquisition process. And it's actually one of the interesting things that we talk a lot about is, the Silicon Valley innovation environment. They're there to take risks, and it's a high risk, high reward environment where they come up with new technologies, make a lot of money. In our environment, there's not a lot of money to be made, and our penchant for taking risks has been really, really stifled in a lot of ways because the environment is one that it has to work perfectly the first time, every time. And as an example, the hypersonics testing that we've embarked on over the last several years, we learned things along the way. We took some risks and we found things out. And historically, we would have learned, or we would have had the observation, we would have rapidly course corrected, and then we would have been testing again. In the environment today, we learn those things, and then we sit in and do a root cause, corrective action, exploratory exercise, and 6 months later, we're testing again instead of 6 days later. And I think that penchant for risk and finding it, the right balance, I think that's the biggest inhibitor to our ability to innovate and go as fast as our adversary is going right now. And most notably, China. They seem to be willing to take a lot more risk than we do.
You talked a little bit about Silicon Valley and probably other startups across the country, but what role are startups going to have as we move forward in strengthening defense in our industrial base?
Yeah, I think they play a very important and prominent role. One of the things that startup ecosystem has is that you get a group of people together. Typically, those startups are going to be smaller. They'll be unified around a vision, and they'll go attack a problem in a very voracious way. And by doing that, they make a lot of progress. And as I was just highlighting, the acquisition system writ large is one that seems to impede progress. And by having a lot of those small entrants pushing hard in the system, I think that will help the entire system in moving forward faster, because there's more ideas, more people saying, we need to go do that and try to pull things through. And so those small entrants, I think, also help the big entities like Lockheed, Martin, Boeing, Northrop, Raytheon, similarly, because that new technology, there's a push for it to happen, and that helps facilitate us having a little bit more voice at that table to also say, hey, we innovate too, and can't we push this through as well?
Well, John, you have a fascinating job. Thank you so much for your time and insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Lockheed Martin for their support of today's program.